I am normally against scrolling and scrolling and scrolling on your For You page on TikTok. And I try not to ever do that. But I'm actually grateful for once that I was doing that because one day I came across my guest today and I just binged his videos. And he is here now to share a lot with you. You are not going to want to miss this one. You may know him as Baxate, but his real name is Carter Abdallah. So, Carter, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here. I've when you reached out to me, I honestly binged some of the your podcasts as well. So it's an honor to be here, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Hey, thank you. You know, it's been interesting because you didn't graduate college long ago. How long have you been working now?
So I graduated last May in 2022, but I was an intern at my current company until September. So really, I've been full time now for I guess a little over half a year, closer to 8, 9, 10 months.
Okay, I mean that's crazy, and I'm only a few years older than you, but I just find myself watching your videos and learning a lot from you. And I told Carter before this that I just think that I don't think I see that he's a very well-rounded guy, and you'll hear about that today because we're going to hit on a lot of different topics. But um, maybe we start with software development, software engineering, because I know that those were some of the first videos I saw from you. I know you talk about a lot of other stuff, but wherever you want to begin with that journey, I want to hear some of that story and kind of where it's brought you today.
Sure. Yeah. So, I, since I was in like sixth grade, I always knew I wanted to be actually a computer engineer, right? So, computer engineering and software engineering is a little bit different in that usually what people say is that computer engineering has software and hardware. It kind of combines both. We did this thing called a time capsule in sixth grade where you would write down three predictions about yourself, about the future, or things you wanted to happen, really whatever you wanted. But the three things I wrote down were I wanted to attend MIT, I wanted to become a computer engineer, and I had a crush on someone in my grade. It was some girl. I don't know what she's up to today. I didn't go to that Institute of Technology, but I did become a computer engineer. So I got one for three. At this time, I didn't really know what like software engineering even was. So when I applied to all of my schools, I applied to computer engineering. I got into a handful of them. I ended up attending Georgia Tech or the Georgia Institute of Technology for computer engineering. And I thought I wanted to be like a chip designer. These are the people who literally are designing either the processors or the graphics cards at like NVIDIA, which also make a lot of money, but it's actually super competitive. I didn't even really know what a software engineer was. And I had a friend who referred me to a job as an intern for a software engineering internship. And when I got the offer of how much they were paying, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. And I just ended up falling in love. And so that was kind of like my gateway in. But at that point, I knew I wanted to be a software engineer, like full time. So I returned to that company, started applying to more companies, started shifting my degree pattern towards more of the software side. As I mentioned, there's software and hardware. So I kind of leaned into the software side and just went all in. I actually picked up a minor in artificial intelligence as well. And then ended up at my current company where I'm a software engineer now. So I did kind of stumble into the field. I know that a lot of my content is surrounded about how to get into the field. But I did a lot of research, sort of on my journey on the way there.
Dude, that's super cool. And that minor in AI, I feel like the timing for that is probably pretty relevant. That's all everybody's talking about these days.
Yeah, no, I think I was actually slated. I was signed up for classes ready to complete my master's in machine learning, which is a subset, obviously, of artificial intelligence. But I saw that the economy was going somewhat poorly. And so when my current company offered me to start full time, I had to make the very tough decision to basically say, no, I'm going to take this job. And if I need to go back to school at a later date. But now there's a small part of me, obviously, that sits here and I'm like, I wonder if got that degree right now, and if I could work at one of these, super, super big, large language model companies.
Sure. And coulda, shoulda, woulda, and maybe you can dabble in that here in the future. One thing I admire about you, like one thing I've noticed is that you don't have to tell me this. I know that you are not the average college student. Like you went to school to learn, to study, and you were very thoughtful and intentional about what you wanted to do with your life. Well, I was about to say you didn't know from day one. Apparently, you did know you wanted to do something in the engineering world since sixth grade. I think I wanted to be an astronaut, so good for you with that. Um, but I think so many people definitely waste a lot of college and definitely after that waste a lot of their 20s, maybe because they weren't very intentional about like what they wanted to do with their life ahead of time. So we can definitely talk about that topic, but just so people are understanding, you're a software engineer now, you're making a couple bucks, it sounds like. Can you just tell us about your role, and then even, I mean, you're transparent about it, which I think is good for people to understand the kind of money that's available. Would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, certainly. So, I have one of my most popular videos that I posted recently is sort of my salary progression, right? And my first ever internship, I was in Atlanta, and they offered me $27 an hour, which for an intern in college is obviously great, great money. But as I soon found out, that's actually kind of pales in comparison to the money that you can actually get out there. When I say this, this is purely for the United States because I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say that these salaries are very unique to the United States, and that in other parts of the world, maybe the salaries are not as competitive. That being said, I returned to the same company. They upped it to $28 an hour. Then I got an internship at my current company. Again, and as an intern, they were paying me $55 an hour to be a software engineering intern. So you're not even a full-time employee, and you're making a salary that, if you compare it to an annual salary, is well over $100,000 a year, which is, again, ridiculous. And then um, now I'm a full-time employee, and my new grad offer, right? I have nothing but a bachelor's degree, was a base salary of $148,000. And then there's bonus and options on top of that. The options might be worth a lot of money. If the company succeeds, they might be worth nothing. And then I've since gotten my first raise up to, so now I'm making, my base salary is $157,000. That being said, I want to make a caveat. I do live in San Francisco, the Bay Area, which is notoriously one of the most expensive areas of the United States. However, I have coworkers who live in Austin and Seattle and these places where there are no income taxes, or the cost of living is lower, and the salaries are the same. It's not like they adjust the salary of the employee based on the state you live in.
Man, guys, I'm gonna start a GoFundMe for Carter. He's a recent college grad that needs it. No, I'm kidding, man. That's awesome. Good for you. And I just I love your transparency, and it seems like you're really stewarding your money well, just as I've seen you um, talk about it. And like I think that's really interesting. It looks like you even made like a spreadsheet to help people with their money. So maybe we talk a little bit about that, but then also not to like bash on college, because I had an amazing experience. You did too. But can you share just a little bit about like maybe the system of colleges, if you will, because you know sometimes people might graduate and struggle to find a job and they're in all this debt.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of twofold, right? The first part of your question there, I would say that, yeah, taking control of your finances early. I think that this is not a problem with, this is a problem with the entire education system as a whole, but we're not really taught financial literacy in a way that is enough to be a functioning adult, right? And so in school, I'm saying. And so, yeah, I think that I kind of fairly early on was taught the value of money by my parents, which I'm very grateful for. Even though we grew up and I was, decently well off, they still taught me the value of a dollar. I understood the concept of taxes. I understood these really important things that are necessary to function in society. Credit cards, I think that's one that I talk about a lot. And so, yeah, when I started making my own money and all of a sudden all of my bills became my own, I took control of that really head on, and I created that expenses tracker, which if anyone can go use it, it's in my bio. But basically, it's just a way to categorize and track every single cent that's coming in or out of your accounts. There's a lot of apps that do this. I just did it for my own, tailor made to my situation, and a lot of people like using it. And it gives you a better understanding of like where your money's going. Are you spending a lot of money eating out? Are you spending a lot of money on certain things that you don't want? So that's the sort of way that I just try and keep track of, how I am spending my money. Even though I do make enough money for my age, it gives me a way to save money and then invest money. And that's what I'm really focusing on. Everything I do is really focusing on my future while still enjoying the present. So
Hold
yeah, there's
up.
that.
I gotta pause you there before we jump
Yeah.
into the college thing, because we're obsessed with immediate gratification in our society. You're making the type of money where you could really flaunt that as a 23, I assume, year old, and the fact that like you're very transparent. You're saving, and people are like, oh, you're in the Bay Area. Like, one, you're getting paid way more than other people, which you said that you're not. But then also, it sounds like you are like not necessarily eating out all the time. Like, what you made a video the other day along the lines of like most people just wildly overspend their money. I know I talk to people that say that the way that they budget is by just like crossing their fingers and hoping they don't spend too much money because they don't want to look at the brutal facts of it. But it seems like you're very intentional about kind of how you spend your money. And I guess what I wanted you to hit on is like, how do you have that mindset of future thinking? Like, most people are just so like now focused. And I just think as a 23-year-old, that's like really impressive and a huge point that I want people to learn from this podcast.
Yeah, I think that yeah, I truthfully I got to give credit to my parents, and I'll probably continue giving credit to my parents to a lot of the times. My parents both grew up fairly modestly. My dad very modestly in a foreign country. He was born in Lebanon and had to flee here during the civil war of Lebanon. And so I mean, he grew up so poor and really kind of came from nothing. And he talked about living with, you know, eight guys in college and, you know, like a two-bedroom just to make ends meet, and having to take so many credits so that he could finish fast, so that because at the time you'd pay per quarter and not per class. And so all that stuff he really instilled into me in sort of the understanding that he basically was said, you know, you delay the gratification now, and then you can live the life you want to live. And what's beautiful about my situation, and hopefully other people can turn it into their situation, is you can do both. You can enjoy now while still thinking about the future. And I think that's really the biggest way. I think so many people think it's a dichotomy of if I'm saving now, then I'm not splurging or I'm not enjoying myself now. And that's absolutely not true, right? I do go out to eat. I do have fun with friends. It's all about a balance, and within the sort of the means that you have, finding a way to do both. And the delayed gratification, I think, is the biggest thing. I think that in today's society, right, like you said, it's just immediate gratification all day, every day, whether it's, you know, TikTok or food or whatever it is. And understanding that sometimes trading that immediate comfort for something that'll pay dividends later is it's a skill that you can build. I think that you get more used to it over time, and it's just one that I've put a conscious effort into cultivating early.
Wow. I'm trying to decide what direction to go because you brought up so many other things. The immediate gratification. We're scrolling on TikTok and being promised these get rich quick schemes, which I definitely want to talk about some of that here in a minute. But it makes me think about you back to college. You know, sometimes people today are being showed on TikTok, a lot of high schoolers of like, skip college, don't do that. You can make a ton of money drop shipping or doing whatever. And I know that you have opinion on like these modern side hustles. But for you, for example, it seems like you really delayed gratification and said, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to learn this skill because I know where it's going to lead me. And so, can you just talk a little bit of going back to what we were talking about before of the value of college, but then maybe how it's not always valuable depending on because of the system what you go into.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, as I think you mentioned, but I'll come out and say it perfectly. So, I went to Georgia Tech. I had a phenomenal experience. I would not trade it for the world. I have no regrets of going to university. That is somewhat of a unique situation. Not everybody can say that, right? But I will say that college does have value, right? It did teach me the skills of becoming a software engineer. I get so many people in my comments saying, how do I self-teach? Should I do this boot camp? Boot camps are these companies that spun up when there was such a need for software engineers that are basically promising you, I will make you a hireable engineer in 6 months. Give me $30,000. You're going to work really hard, but then you'll become an engineer. And anyways, and then online courses, all these different ways, right? And people ask me, well, how did you learn to become a software engineer? I learned in school. Like I did not practice coding that much on my own. I practiced in class, I studied, I did the projects, and it works, and it sometimes works, right? And so I think this notion, there's this huge sort of attack on college right now, which again I'll get into in a second, because there are flaws with the system. But this sort of blanket statement that college is an antiquated system that has no value anymore, that's just you're just throwing money away, I think is ridiculous. And the other side of that is that, like I said, college is not just for school. I think that college was a great time for me in adjusting into becoming an actual adult. If you thrust me into a full-time position at 18 years old, I was not mature enough, right? And I think that's true for a lot of people. Some people are, but I was not mature enough to be ready to pay my own bills and do all of these things. And so it was a great sort of gradual transition into adulthood, which I think is the other thing that college is great for. Now, the situations where it might not be worth it, I think that college, it has gotten super expensive, right? And it's gotten honestly unaffordable for many people. And that's just an unfortunate side effect of many different things that have contributed to this. And so I don't think that college is for everybody. I think that, for example, trade schools are great. I'm a huge proponent of, if you want to become a plumber, electrician, anything like that, I'm a great proponent of that. And similarly, I caution people who have a passion or who want to go into something that is known, it's well known, to not make a lot of money. I don't think that certain majors are useless, right? I'm very careful to say that. But I do think that it can be somewhat financially irresponsible if you are passionate about something that does not make a lot of money and you're prepared to go into hundreds of thousands of debt. I think that it's honestly a fault of the system, again, that we allow this decision making on an 18-year-old, because an 18-year-old probably isn't ready. They might think, it's future me's problem, I'm not going to worry about it now, when they can go into life crippling amounts of debt or put their parents into life crippling amounts of debt. I think is a fault of the system. I don't think that should be realistic. But here, it's the world we live in. And so my advice on that front is do some research, right? Even at 18, do some research. See if what you want to study has financial outcomes that, or like, it could give you a good ROI or return on investment. Because I think that I always say that, like you said, college to me was a tool to better myself as a human being, but also to get a job, right? I think that you shouldn't pay tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for something that isn't going to make you money. That's just stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah. And man, I learned so much about myself. I was not ready to be a working professional at 18 years old. I'm not sure I was ready at 22, but I was more ready. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I even heard you mention this the other day. You were just talking about how you were referring to it as luck. You were like, we are lucky. The fact that I had two parents that gave me a hug when I was a kid is more than a lot of people in the world. And they gave me the life that they gave me. They poured into me the way that they did, and they helped me go to college is so out of my control. And I want to be forever grateful for that. I know everyone doesn't have that opportunity, but I do love the encouragement to just do some research. Don't put it off to the future, because you really don't want to hurt yourself in the long run. But to the high schooler, to the 17-year-old that does have the opportunity to go to university and really study something, but is scrolling all day long, seeing people promising them these ways to make tons of money. What do you say to that guy, or what do you say to that girl?
Yeah. I think that the world has changed. I don't really know when it flipped as far as what I'm about to say, but when people used to say they want to make a lot of money, right? Um, it, Entrepreneurial, these sort of business things were actually not very popular. And instead, what it would be go into a high paying job. You want to make a lot of money, become a doctor, become an engineer, become a lawyer. And that still exists to some extent. But I think that a lot of people are now going down the route of what they think is entrepreneurial, which is these sort of, I've referred to them as side hustles, but a lot of people treat them as main hustles. And these are the drop shipping, the Amazon FBA, the white labeling SaaS, and the SMMAs. The reason why I know so much about these is because it also shows up on my feed, right? And not only that, if I were a 14, 15, 16-year old boy, girl, whatever, I could see myself being sucked into these because it's so, I mean, it is so enticing. I'm no better than, these people. I'm just trying to offer from the other side of the sort of fence here of being like, no, don't go down that, for a number of reasons, right? I think that the promise that it's entrepreneurial is wrong, right? I think that to really, I'm super entrepreneurial. I think that I would love to start my own business one day. I have a lot of friends who have started businesses, successful ones. But really, when I think about, are you doing a business, right? Are you being entrepreneurial? You should ask yourself, what is the problem that I'm solving? And if the answer is not something, it doesn't have to be novel, right? But for drop shipping or for these modern side hustles, if they were to disappear tomorrow, would the world really change? And the answer is just no, right? When you are just marking up an Alibaba product, what you're doing is you're extracting value, you're extracting money from some middle process that's sort of hazy. And it just to me, you're not bringing any value to the world, you're not actually being entrepreneurial. And this is going, I'll just touch on it briefly of a different topic, but the notion of the matrix, right? Escaping the matrix. To me, you're not escaping the matrix. You're making Jeff Bezos richer. You're subscribing to it. You're literally promoting. Amazon FBA is just making Amazon bigger. That is not escaping the matrix, regardless of the money that's going into your account. I'm very critical of these people. Oh, the last thing is just that red flags across the board. If somebody is selling you a course to tell you how to make money, red flags. Because if they were making the money or if they had the secret, why would they need to sell it? Shouldn't they be making millions and millions of dollars? Why would they sell their secret? And I think that in general, you can find most of the information online anyways. But I think that so many people spend so much time thinking that this is a get rich quick scheme, like you said, and that they're going to do this instead of college. And I think back to, my parents and the opportunities that I were given. And it almost feels like a lot of people are ready to squander those and are ready to throw those away. And 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line, the 99% of the people who don't make it doing these things are going to look back and say, I'm sorry, mom and dad. I'm sorry that I'm still, living with you. I thought this would work. I was wrong. And will have to be left to pick up the pieces when they could instead go the traditional route. There's a reason why the traditional route exists. And that's where I say you owe it to your parents if they gave you these opportunities, you owe it to your parents to have something to fall back on. If you want to go take risks, go for it, but at least have something to fall back on. Don't be living with your parents until you're in your 30s because you wanted to make it big.
Great answer, man. If someone is willing to try to learn some of these like modern side hustles, if you will, like I imagine, well, you made the point first off of, sorry for those listening, I make sure my computer isn't about to die. Anyways, you made the point of like, if the problem, if it disappeared tomorrow, would the world be much different? And the answer is probably no. And so if you actually have that entrepreneurial itch and you have the work ethic, then there's lots of other things that you could do. Like if you're willing to actually do the work that these courses have in them, maybe you actually might be successful, but it does take a lot of hard work. And the reason that they are willing to quote give away all of their secrets is because they know that nobody's like gonna actually do it. Maybe 1% of people will. And so the 1% of people that actually do that, like if you put that energy and effort, and again, you might not have the opportunity to go to college, but into like anything else, I think it would pay off. And I just think that this is a product of wanting instant gratification and people not really willing to put in the work. And I'm not like bashing on anyone. I'm now 25, and basically since I've graduated college is really when I've learned the value of hard work. So I'm not trying to act like I think it's almost preying on the young man who's, and it doesn't have to be man, but whose brain is not developed. Guess what? Your brain doesn't stop developing till you're 25. I'm 25, and I kind of think my brain still has some developing to do. Uh,
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man.
Um, okay, so I want to go back to college here for a little bit. You found a way to be an adult in college. I'm sure you did some fun stuff and maybe some things here and there you regret, sure. But like the fact that you went to Georgia Tech, probably had some really hard schooling, learned a lot, um, was on this big fitness journey, was the president of your fraternity, like well-rounded guy who's very driven. I mean, have you always been like that? And maybe a lot of it does go back to your parents, but I want to hear a little bit about that ambition and then even some of your experiences, maybe as the president of your fraternity back in the day.
Yeah, certainly. So, as far as whether I've always been driven, I don't know if I can confidently say yes to that. I've always been a good student. I've just always subscribed to the idea of schooling, and I've always, and this might be a somewhat of a fault of mine, but I've always also found somewhat of approval in the grades that I received. And so,
Mhm.
one thing that I was always really good at is getting really good grades on standardized tests, on in schools, in everything. And so, that building that early, I mean, even since like elementary school, middle school, finding value in getting high grades meant that by the time I got to college, schooling was I had it more or less figured out. And that way, I had the opportunity to focus on other things. I think a lot of people, when they get to college or get to a highly technical degree, whatever it is, would probably not have maybe the base that I had. And so it takes up a lot more time. So I'm grateful for that. As far as where I found my drive and where I really found this sort of grit, I honestly would say it was partly the gym. I was never really passionate about anything until I found weightlifting. I mean, I tried every single sport under the sun, and my parents put me in every single sport, right? Soccer, swimming, tennis, cross country, track, all of it, basketball, wrestling, like everything. And I quit all of them. I was not a very competitive person growing up. I was a very tall, skinny, lanky, kind of awkward dude. Probably the more stereotypical software engineer when you think of one now. And I had a really great coach my sophomore year of high school. We had a weightlifting program. He was this, I mean, like just the beacon of what you would consider like a role model for someone who's a young boy. Like he was masculine, strong, soft spoken, but very like confident. And he basically said, he said, I mean, he was like, no, like I see you in me. Like you remind me of my younger self, and I fell in love with the sport of weightlifting. I mean, I just the sort of you get in what you put out was so concrete and so measurable. And I ended up putting on not all muscle, but I was around 155 pounds at 6 feet tall when I started. I was 15 years old, and just for a little bit of context, now I'm 6'2", 210 pounds. So I'm a different human being, and I remember when I showed up to college, these were the people I had already put on some size by then. And it was the first time that a group of people had met me since I was the big guy, the strong guy. And I was treated so differently. And a lot of people would take that as sort of like a offense, or like, that people are shallow, which there's a factor to that. Um, but I also saw it as like I can materialistically change my life, and this has improved my life dramatically. And so that sort of understanding of you get in what you put out, you can improve your situation, you can change things about yourself, was a catalyst for me to start doing that in other aspects of my life. And then I became more confident. Wanted to take on more leadership positions. And yes, I did end up becoming the president of my fraternity in college, which was a great experience. I was I held every pretty much position that you can before president within the fraternity, but ultimately I did ran for president and ended up getting it, and that was a phenomenal experience. I when you think of like a fraternity, I do actually joke. I say I was an idiot in charge of a bunch of idiots, which there's some truth to that. But at the end of the day, we were all college age men studying very hard degrees at a technical school, and it was my job to lead the direction of the chapter. And something that I heard at a conference, actually, as part of being president, that really stuck with me was that this is the position that you'll have with the most responsibility, the least power, with the least risk, right? And so basically, what that means is that the most responsibility, if something goes wrong, it's your head. If people are looking to you, if you know, you have to basically lead the chapter. But nobody has to listen to you, right? You're not their boss. And so that's where it's like the least power, right? You are quite literally have to lead by example, and they have to want to follow you because they don't have to. And then last thing is the least risk. If you mess up, nobody's livelihood is gone. Unless you're doing something really, really stupid, which our fraternities out there, but my fraternity was not, nobody's going to die, right? If you make a mistake and you're in a high level position at a company, people could lose their jobs. People could not be able to feed their families. If you're a doctor and you make a careless mistakes, people can get hurt. That's not true for this position. So it was a great way to be exposed to leadership in sort of like this sandbox, and it was great for me to be able to do that at such an early age. I mean, this was 80 plus guys that I was talking to on a weekly basis, so I got to practice my public speaking. And so a lot of people are like, oh, when you think about like the TikTok and stuff now, oh, don't you feel nervous like talking on camera? And I was like, no, I had to, regardless whether I felt like it or not, I had to talk to 80 plus of dudes who are ready to rip into you if you make a mistake, if you slip up on your words. I'm used to this at this point. So yeah, that was my experience as a president.
Man. And it all started with the gym. I'm sure there's more elements to it,
Yeah.
but that fires me up though, because you get out of it what you put into it. You are in control. And for the 99% of people like you, and I want to be sensitive because I know that people have developed eating disorders and stuff like that, but like you really can control like the way that you look, the way that you feel, the amount of muscle that you put on. Like it's up to you. And I saw you post this video, and it was sick. You were like, my secret hacks to putting on this much muscle or something. And you were like, I don't take creatine. I don't take protein powder. I haven't done this. It's called 8 years of consistently lifting. I've never missed more than a week. Is that true? That's amazing.
Yeah, it is true, and unfortunately, I have to come out here and say that I recently, and this is what I was talking with you right before the podcast started. I'm sick, and I'm the sickest I've been. I'm improving now, and so yes, as in currently, I'm on the longest hiatus I've ever taken from the gym. I think we're on day like 10 or 11. But before right now, yes, I had never gone 7 days consecutively without a workout. I remember I got my wisdom teeth out, and they said like wait a week. On day 6, I was like in the gym working out, and I was like being very careful. But yeah, no, it's something that is so ingrained in my lifestyle now that a lot of people also ask me, how did you find time to manage to work out and be an engineer, or work out and do this, or work out and do whatever, right? And to me, the answer, and it doesn't sound helpful to a lot of people, I say it's a non-negotiable. I mean, it is part of my routine every single day, almost every single day. I mean, I take rest days, but point being, you will find time if it's as important to you as your other top priorities. You will find time. It's just a matter of fact. And so, yeah, that's how I was able to be so consistent.
Man, you make time for what you want to do, for what's a priority, and fitness really transfers to every other area of your life, like in the way that you look, in the way that you feel, in your mindset, in your confidence. And it's really cool to hear how that, man, that's special that you got to show up to college. And I know you said it might sound somewhat shallow, but the fact that people like viewed you the way they did is really cool. And then being fraternity president at the same time, um, I love that. It's like the most power, or the what was it? What was that saying again?
It's the most responsibility with the least power and the lowest risk.
Yes. So it's a and I can speak from personal experience. Like it is so much responsibility with no power, but that brings me to a huge leadership principle, that leadership is much more about your influence than your title. And so one day, and guys, this is a huge point of this podcast. A lot of us are in our 20s, so you're not a manager right now. You're not leading teams. But if you're listening to this, like if you care enough to listen to the awesome people I have on here, then you're probably an aspiring leader of people. And the fact that you had an opportunity to learn how to lead through influence, because you weren't people's bosses and you couldn't fire them, means that like you learn that one day when you are someone's boss and you can fire them, you're going to be a much better leader because of it. And I really want us to be learning like to lead ourselves right now, which is what you're doing in the gym, which is what you're doing with your studies and your habits and your finances, so that one day when the stakes are higher, you're going to be able to lead other people, because you can't lead other people if you can't lead yourself. And like Carter, I'm sure you're not perfect, but you're checking a lot of these boxes. I'm learning a lot from you, man.
Oh, thanks, Hampton.
Well, my computer, for those of you listening, is at like 1%, and I have a million more questions for you. So we're probably gonna have to do a round two of this, but thank you so much for joining me. I'm gonna put a link to everything below, because really what I was just doing is asking him questions about his sick videos that he posts every day. So the way that I like ending this, some people say it's cheesy, but I like for the guest to tell people to wake up and lead. So you signed up for this one. So I'll say it's time for you and me, and then you say to wake up and lead. Sound cool?
Sounds great.
All right, it's time for you and me.
To wake up and lead.
Let's go.